In filmmaking, there is a golden rule: write what you know. But in 2008, an aspiring director named Mark Twitchell took that advice too literally. He was obsessed with the TV show Dexter. He idolized the fictional serial killer. But Mark didn't just want to watch the show. He wanted to star in it. He wrote a script called SK Confessions about a man who lures victims to a garage to kill them. And then, he put down his pen, picked up a pipe, and made the movie for real. We all love a good anti-hero. We cheer for Walter White. We root for Dexter Morgan. We understand the difference between entertainment and reality. But what happens when a fan loves a character so much, he tries to become him? Mark Twitchell was an amateur filmmaker in Edmonton. He was a Star Wars fanatic, a prop builder, and a dreamer. But his dreams took a dark turn when he discovered Dexter, the hit show about a forensic analyst who kills bad guys. Twitchell didn't just watch the show. He studied it. He became obsessed. He rented a garage. He built a kill room identical to the one on TV. He bought the same plastic sheeting. He even adopted the character's internal monologue. But unlike the TV show, Twitchell's victims weren't bad guys. They were innocent men looking for love. Welcome to Hidden Killers. Today, we are analyzing the Screenplay of Death. We will look at the police interrogation where Twitchell tried to direct the detectives, the 40-page script that predicted the murder in chilling detail, and the tragic fate of John Altinger. Action. In 2007, if you met Mark Twitchell in Edmonton, Alberta, you wouldn't have seen a monster. You would have seen a dreamer. He was a 29-year-old husband, a father to a baby daughter, and a man possessed by a singular ambition. He wanted to be the next George Lucas. Twitchell was a superfan of Star Wars, but he wasn't content to just watch the movies. He wanted to build them. He raised thousands of dollars from friends and family to fund his magnum opus, a prequel fan film called Secrets of the Rebellion. He was charismatic and persuasive. He convinced people to work for free, promising them exposure and glory. On set, he was the commander-in-chief. He built elaborate props, rented a massive warehouse, and directed actors with the confidence of a Hollywood veteran. But beneath the surface of this creative energy, there was a hollowness. Friends later described Mark as a pathological liar who cared more about the appearance of success than the work itself. He loved the role of the director. He loved manipulating reality to fit his vision. He treated people like props. To make a movie, you need a set. In late September 2008, Twitchell rented a detached double garage in the south side of Edmonton. He told the landlord he needed the space to work on a car and store movie props. Once he had the keys, the set dressing began. But this wasn't for a camera crew. Twitchell went to hardware stores across the city. He bought heavy-duty plastic sheeting, the kind used by painters, but also the kind used by Dexter Morgan to catch blood. He bought duct tape. He bought a large metal table used for game processing, specifically designed to drain fluids. He lined the walls of the garage with the plastic, creating a sealed, sterile environment. He covered the windows to ensure absolute darkness. He set up the metal table in the center of the room. It was a terrifying sight, a clinical slaughterhouse hidden in a suburban alley. This was the kill room. It was a physical manifestation of his fantasy. Twitchell spent hours in there alone, likely pacing the floor, rehearsing his lines, and preparing for his scene. He wasn't just a fanboy anymore. He was a predator building his web. And once the set was built, he needed to find his lead actor. Every great film starts with a script. Mark Twitchell sat down at his laptop and began to write a document that would become the smoking gun of his life. He titled it SK Confessions, short for Serial Killer Confessions. This document is unique in the history of true crime. It wasn't written as a diary, and it wasn't written purely as fiction. It was a hybrid of blurring of his own life and his fantasies. The document detailed his plan in excruciating precision. He wrote about creating a fake online dating profile to lure men. He wrote about the weapon he would use. He wrote about how he would dispose of the body. Twitchell would later claim in court that this was purely a work of fiction, a method writing exercise to help him understand the mind of a killer. But as you read the document, the tone shifts. It becomes practical. It becomes a checklist. He wasn't writing a story to entertain an audience. He was writing a manual for himself. He was scripting the murder before it happened, trying to control the chaos of real life by forcing it onto the page. On Friday, October 3rd, 2008, the casting call began. Mark Twitchell created a fake profile on the dating site Plenty of Fish. He used photos of a blonde woman and called her Sheena. He cast a wide net, looking for a man who was lonely, eager, and trusting. He found Gilles Tetreault. Gilles was a shy computer programmer who was thrilled to match with such an attractive woman. They exchanged messages. Sheena was flirtatious but elusive. She told Gilles that she couldn't host at her house because of roommates, but she had a place they could go, a rented garage where she kept her car. It was a strange request, but Gilles was hopeful. He agreed to meet her there. He drove to the industrial alleyway, his heart pounding with anticipation. He parked his car and walked toward the garage door. He texted Sheena that he had arrived. The garage door slowly rolled up. Inside, it was pitch black. Gilles stepped across the threshold, expecting a date. He was walking into the pilot episode of Mark Twitchell's horror show. As Gilles stepped into the darkness, he didn't see Sheena. He saw a man wearing a hooded sweatshirt and a plastic hockey mask. Before Gilles could process what was happening, the masked man lunged at him. Twitchell was holding a stun baton, a weapon he had bought specifically for this moment because he thought it would be a clean, quiet way to incapacitate a victim, just like in the movies. He jammed the baton into Gilles' neck and pulled the trigger. But real life isn't a movie. The stun baton crackled, but it didn't knock Gilles out. It just hurt him. Adrenaline flooded Gilles' system. He realized instantly that this wasn't a prank. He was fighting for his life. Gilles fought back. He grabbed the baton. He punched the masked man. Gilles Tetreault sped away, his mind reeling. He had just escaped a serial killer. But in the bizarre twist of human psychology, Gilles didn't go to the police. He was embarrassed. He felt foolish for falling for a catfish. He worried that maybe it was just a sick prank. He stayed silent, trying to repress the memory. Back in the garage, Mark Twitchell was furious. But he wasn't panicked about getting caught. He was annoyed by the production errors. He went home and opened his laptop. He updated the script. He treated the attempted murder of a human being like a rough draft that needed editing. He wrote, "I made a huge mistake. I trusted the stun baton. It was useless. Next time, I need something reliable." He analyzed the encounter coldly. He decided that intimidation wasn't enough. He needed blunt force. He replaced the stun baton with a copper pipe. He updated his plan. And then, he went back to Plenty of Fish to find a new co-star. 1 week later, on October 10th, 2008, John Altinger swiped right on Sheena. John was a 38-year-old pipefitter, a hard worker, and a man who desperately wanted to find love. He started chatting with the persona Twitchell had created. Unlike Gilles, John told people where he was going. He was excited. He emailed his friends the directions Sheena had sent him. He even joked, "If I disappear, check this garage." It was a dark joke that would become a prophecy. John arrived at the garage on a Friday night. He parked his red Mazda. He walked up the driveway. He was expecting romance. He was expecting a new chapter in his life. Twitchell was waiting inside. He had learned from his mistakes. He had ditched the stun baton. He was gripping a heavy length of copper pipe. He had practiced his swing. The lights were off. The camera was rolling in his mind. John Altinger stepped into the kill room. The moment he crossed the threshold, Twitchell struck. There was no hesitation this time. Twitchell swung the copper pipe with lethal force, striking John in the head. The script SK Confessions describes the brutality that followed. It details the surprise, the collapse, and the finality of the violence. Twitchell didn't stop at one blow. He ensured that John would not fight back like Gilles had. In the span of seconds, Mark Twitchell crossed the line he had been flirting with for months. He was no longer a director, a fanboy, or a method writer. He was a murderer. He dragged John's body onto the metal game processing table. This was the moment he had fantasized about while watching Dexter. He was in the kill room. He was in control. But reality is messy. There was no soundtrack. There were no clever quips. There was just a dead man on a table and a massive problem to solve. Now came the part of the show that Dexter usually glosses over with a montage: the cleanup. Twitchell dismembered John Altinger's body on the table. He treated the human remains like the game animals the table was designed for. He attempted to burn the remains in a 55-gallon drum barrel in his parents' backyard, telling them he was burning garbage. But the human body is difficult to destroy. When the fire didn't work as fast as he hoped, he panicked. He eventually dumped the remains into a storm sewer a few blocks away. He cleaned the garage with bleach. He hid the car. He thought he had wrapped production. He thought he had committed the perfect crime. He went home, washed his hands, and likely watched TV. He didn't realize that while he had followed the script for the murder, Mark Twitchell had followed his script for the murder, but he failed to write a convincing ending for the victim. On October 13th, 3 days after John Altinger disappeared, his friends received a strange email from his account. The email claimed that John had met a wealthy woman named Jen, and she was whisking him away to Costa Rica for the winter. It read, "She's taking me on all expenses paid trip. I'm quitting my job. I'll call you when I get settled." To Twitchell, this was a clever plot twist. To John's friends, it was bad fiction. John was a responsible pipe fitter. He wouldn't quit his job via email. He wouldn't leave his life behind without a phone call. And most importantly, John didn't have a passport. The dialogue Twitchell wrote for John didn't sound like John. It sounded like a character in a bad movie. His friends immediately sensed that something was wrong. They didn't buy the tropical vacation ending. They suspected a tragedy. John's friends were so worried that they decided to investigate themselves. They broke into John's condo, hoping to find him or a clue to his whereabouts. The apartment was undisturbed. His dirty dishes were in the sink. His toothbrush was in the bathroom. But the smoking gun was on the counter. There, sitting in plain sight, was John's passport. You can't go to Costa Rica without a passport. The email was a lie. The Jen story was a fabrication. John's friends contacted the Edmonton Police Service immediately. They handed over the emails, including the directions Sheena had sent John on the night he vanished. The police ran the address. It wasn't a tropical resort. It was a rented garage in a gritty industrial alleyway on the south side of Edmonton. On October 17th, detectives arrived at the garage. Mark Twitchell was there. When the police approached him, he didn't run. He played the role of the cooperative, confused artist. He told them, "I'm a filmmaker. I'm shooting a short horror movie called House of Cards." He invited them inside. The detectives looked around and saw the plastic sheeting covering the walls. They saw the metal table. It looked exactly like a murder scene. Twitchell laughed and explained, "It's a set. It's supposed to look scary. We filmed a scene here where a guy gets killed. He was using the truth as a disguise." He pointed to the fake blood on the floor. But Detective Bill Clark, a veteran homicide investigator, had a gut feeling. He noticed a padlock on the door. He noticed Twitchell's arrogance. He decided to seize Twitchell's laptop and impound his car, a red Pontiac Sunfire. While searching Twitchell's property, police found a car key hidden in his pocket. Twitchell claimed it was for a prop car. But when detectives walked the neighborhood, They found a red Mazda 3 parked just a few blocks away. They tried the key. It turned. The engine roared to life. It was John Altinger's car. Inside the trunk, they found traces of blood. Twitchell's story began to crumble. He tried to pivot, claiming he had bought the car from John for cash before John left for Costa Rica. He was improvising, trying to rewrite the script in real time. But he had made a fatal error. He had forgotten that digital evidence is harder to clean than a garage floor. The police forensics team cracked Twitchell's laptop. He had deleted the file SK Confessions, dragging it to the virtual trash bin, thinking it was gone forever. But in the digital world, nothing is ever truly deleted. The experts recovered the document. It was 42 pages long. As the detectives began to read it, they realized they weren't looking at a screenplay. They were looking at a diary of the murder they were investigating. The document described the murder of John Altinger in excruciating detail. It described a specific weapon. It described the way the body fell. It even described the Costa Rica email plot. It matched the evidence perfectly. Twitchell had written his own confession, titled it Serial Killer Confessions, and practically handed it to the police. When the news broke that a local filmmaker had been arrested for murder in a garage, a man named Gilles Tetreault was watching TV at home. His blood ran cold. He recognized the face. He recognized the garage. He realized that the prank he had escaped a week earlier wasn't a prank at all. He had narrowly escaped being the star of Twitchell's first film. Gilles went to the police. His testimony was the final nail in the coffin. He described the hockey mask, the stun baton, and the layout of the garage. His story matched the failed attempt chapter in Twitchell's SK Confessions document perfectly. It proved that John Altinger wasn't an isolated incident. He was the successful second take. The SK Confessions document had one final secret to reveal: the location of the body. The script described dumping the remains into a storm sewer. Using the landmarks described in the document, police narrowed their search. It took a year and a half, but in June 2010, investigators finally descended into the sewers. They found John Altinger. His remains were decomposed, but dental records confirmed his identity. Twitchell had treated a human being like garbage, discarding him in the darkness to rot. It was a stark contrast to the clean, stylized Bay Harbor butcher dumping scenes in Dexter. Reality was dirty, smelly, and tragic. The trial began in 2011. It was a media circus. Reporters from all over the world descended on Edmonton to cover the Dexter Killer. Twitchell seemed to enjoy the attention. He took notes. He smiled at the gallery. In a move that shocked his lawyers, Twitchell insisted on taking the stand. He wanted to tell his side of the story. He wanted to direct the narrative one last time. He admitted to killing John Altinger, but he claimed it was self-defense. He spun a convoluted story about how the movie production went wrong. John got angry, and a fight broke out. He tried to charm the jury. He tried to use his storytelling skills to create reasonable doubt. But the jury had read the script. They knew he had planned this for weeks. The jury deliberated for only 5 hours. They saw through the performance. They found Mark Twitchell guilty of first-degree murder. When the verdict was read, the director mask finally slipped. Twitchell looked stunned. He wasn't the brilliant anti-hero who outsmarts the system. He was just a murderer who got caught. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Justice was served, but for John's family, there was no sequel. There was no reboot. Their loss was permanent. Mark Twitchell is currently serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Saskatchewan. But the story has one final, ironic twist. Reports from inside the prison surfaced that Twitchell had purchased a cable package for his cell. And what did he watch? Reruns of Dexter. Even in prison, he couldn't let go of the fantasy. He is still the fanboy watching the show, likely convinced that he is the main character of a tragedy rather than the villain of a true crime story. Mark Twitchell proved that life can imitate art, but unlike TV, reality has consequences. There are no retakes. There are no writer's rooms to save you. There is only the cold, hard truth of a life sentence. Mark Twitchell wanted to be famous. He wanted to be remembered as a visionary director. Instead, he is remembered as a copycat, man who had to steal his personality from a TV show because he didn't have one of his own. John Altinger was an innocent man looking for connection. He became the victim of a man looking for content. It is a terrifying reminder that some people view the world through a lens where empathy doesn't exist. I want to hear your take. Do you think Mark Twitchell would have killed even without Dexter? Or did the show give him the blueprint he needed? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the screenplay of death, hit the like button and subscribe. We have more true stories that are stranger than fiction.